everyone, welcome to episode 2 of Spookbox, the podcast where three housemates with different opinions watch horror films and then talk about them. Today I'm joined by Conor.
Hello.
And Daff.
How's it going, guys?
And we'll be discussing the 2019 film Colour Out of Space. Directed by Richard Stanley and featuring everyone's favourite expressionist actor, Nicolas Cage.
Woo.
The film is an adaptation of H.P. Lovecraft's short story from 1927. Before we dive into a plot summary, with of course spoilers ahead, I'll briefly get initial opinions out of the way. I also want to mention that this film is by Elijah Wood's production company Spectre Vision, creators of 2018's Mandy, so my genre bias for psychedelic horror will be fully hanging out. Let's begin. Should we start with Daff?
First impressions of the film, I really enjoyed it the second time around because it was really the first time that I properly saw it all the way through, because I think I fell asleep at a crucial moment during the first time I watched it.
Is that to say that the film is too long?
No, it's because I'm getting old and can't watch films anymore.
You fell asleep.
I fell asleep.
Do you have any idea which bit you missed the first time?
I missed a crucial part where Lavinia does her ritual, basically.
That is crucial.
when she cuts herself.
That's right, yeah.
Oh.
But I really, really enjoyed it my second watch through. I'm so glad that these films are being made and also being funded by someone like Elijah Wood.
Yeah.
Even when he's not featuring in the films himself.
Do you feel his presence?
I do feel his presence. Yeah, I really do feel his presence because we watched that other film.
Keep your secrets.
I forget what it's called now, the one where he tries to meet his father.
Here Comes Daddy.
Come to Daddy.
Here
Comes Daddy.
Here comes Daddy. Daddy is here.
But it felt like
it's Daddy.
on the similar vibe to that film. I love that someone like Colin Stetson can do the score for this kind of thing. I think he's a really great musician.
Yes.
Yeah, it's great. I think it's a great
For
movie.
anybody that doesn't know, basically Daff is like a huge music buff. He is a music journalist, so he knows about music so much more than either of the rest of us do.
I do my best. Yeah.
Part of me wonders if he just makes up names to test
Yes,
us.
Colin
all the time.
Stetson.
All the time.
And,
Colin Smurfson
and
did
the
the music.
Troubadour Orchestra.
And I'm like, okay, sure.
Right, should I go? Should I?
Yeah, initial thoughts. Save all
Okay.
the spice for later, though.
Oh, saving the spice. Okay, it's not spicy, but basically, yeah. So Heather, you and I. What? We went to go see this film in
That
the
works.
Everyman Theatre cinema in Glasgow, this wee tiny independent cinema that was great.
Moneybags.
Oh yeah, I mean it was interesting though because there was that. It did smell quite a lot of chips because they serve food there.
They serve like a full meal along with the
Yeah.
movie. It's like one of those places that stresses me out. I'm a messy eater the best of times. Like
darkened room.
Do they have the
I
food
don't know how
kiosk?
people do that.
Do they have it in the same?
Yeah, but you order
room?
your
No,
food
it's like
and then
table
they bring it in.
service. Yeah.
So
Not
it's
into
like
that.
table service. It was a bit weird. It was a bit
seems
strange that
dystopian
this.
to me.
Yeah, like the smell of like fried food. I think somebody had a halloumi burger or something, and it was very. I don't know. I mean, it's a bad sign that I can remember that.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But I appreciate it. I appreciate what they're trying to do with an independent cinema. So we saw it there. I loved it. It was great. We were talking about it for ages afterwards. We had such a lovely experience. Then we streamed it. The three of us watched it together. And again, absolutely loved it. I was really on board. I thought it was this really confident film, very colourful, very, very vibrant. Then, recently, I read the short story. And I think that there are some themes in the short story. There are some elements to it that are just explored so much more effectively on the page. And I think that the film maybe has a sense of humor that is possibly out of place. I hate to do that. I hate to be the Marvel geek saying, there's too much humor in this.
There's too many jokes.
There's too many jokes.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I mean, yeah, so that's where I'm coming from anyway.
I think we'll get into that later. Like, there's definitely challenges to portraying something that is never before seen by the human eyes on film.
Yeah.
But I'm really excited to hear about what you read. So when we move on to Plot summary. It's a little bit chunky. A lot actually happens in this film, so settle in. Okay, we first learn of the Gardner family via Ward, played by Elliot Knight, a hydrologist surveying the water table nearby their pastoral farm. Ward meets Lavinia, played by Madeline Arthur, as she's undertaking a Wiccan ritual in the hopes of restoring her mother's health following a battle with cancer. This isn't the only trouble facing the Gardners, as patriarch Nathan, Nicolas Cage, struggles to grow crops and raise alpacas for their milk. Teresa Gardner, played by Joley Richardson, can't get enough Wi-Fi to work. Older son Benny, played by Brendan Mayer, is always getting stoned with local squatter come pothead Ezra, played by Tommy Chong, air horns. Youngest son Jack is withdrawn, and Lavinia craves a more cosmopolitan life. One night, Nathan coaxes Teresa into having sex, despite her reluctance following her mastectomy, but they are interrupted by a piercing light from a meteor crashing onto the grounds of their house. The meteor emits an unearthly colour and distorts the surrounding area with a smell that troubles Nathan. The next morning, Ward visits, as does the local mayor and sheriff of the nearest town, Arkham, but the meteor appears to have receded in size and is no longer glowing. However, later, Nathan and Lavinia witness the meteor being struck by bolts of lightning, and Ward notices the water has taken on the colour after testing it. The well of the property begins to host strange vegetation around it and mutated insects, and a news crew arrives only to find the meteor to be gone and Nathan appearing like a drunken fool upon interview. So, later, Teresa is preparing dinner and absent-mindedly cuts off two of her fingers. The adults head for the hospital, leaving Benny in charge, who inexplicably fails to herd the alpacas. The dog runs away, and Jack becomes terrorised by something in the well. Upon return, Nathan rages at their children's ineptitude, despite his encountering a strange jellyfish-like creature in the shower drain. The next day, Nathan's harvest tomatoes are enlarged and inedible. That night, Teresa rushes to Benny and Jack's aid after hearing them scream in the barn. The culprit, the alpacas, have formed a deranged mass, and as Teresa and Jack leave the barn, the lightning strikes them, fusing them into one horrible being. All electronic devices have stopped functioning, including the car, and facing this isolatory dilemma, Nathan and the remaining children carry the tumorous, moaning being inside and eventually to the attic. Nathan flies into a rage, taking to the barn to enact revenge upon the equally hindered alpaca amalgam with his shotgun. He then heads to shoot his mutated wife and son, but can't go through with it. Traumatised, Lavinia performs a second Wiccan ritual, this time alongside the Necronomicon, and in an attempt to secure her safety, she mutilates herself. She compels Benny to leave with her, and he hears dog Sam whining from the well and goes after him. The colour leaches from the well and kills him. Lavinia loses her grip on reality, as does Nathan, who locks her in the attic with the monster, which is mutated further and attacks her. Ward and the sheriff arrive, breaking into the attic just in time to respond to Lavinia's screams and distract the monster, which Nathan shoots. As they try to leave, the colour erupts from the well. Grief-stricken Nathan shoots at the colour, but the sheriff mistakes his aim for Ward and shoots him in retaliation. Nathan dies in Lavinia's arms. After all her efforts, she refuses to leave, relinquishing her autonomy to the colour. Still, after failing to rescue an already mutated Ezra, Ward returns for Lavinia. She lingers by the well, which the colour suddenly explodes from, and signs of its mutation appear in her eyes. She touches Ward and he receives a vision of the colour's extraterrestrial homestead, a morphing, tentacled space terrain that undulates to infinity. Lavinia appears to dissolve, perhaps independently of, or along with the colour, back to space. Ward flees to the house, which reveals all of the deceased Gardner family inside, but as spectral tapes playing out time fragments, including a terrifying Nathan who follows and attacks him all the way to the cellar. Ward emerges to find the property dissolved into ash and drained of all colour and life, except the relic of Lavinia's compass. In the epilogue, an aged Ward reflects upon the horrors of the place and what became of the Gardner family below an oddly tainted sky. Okay, so there's our plot summary.
It's a lot of stuff.
So,
Cool.
shall we dive into some initial questions?
Yeah, go ahead. I mean, actually, listening to your plot summary, interestingly, it sounds a lot more like the short story than I thought it would, actually. Now that you said it, like the thing about the meteorite shrinking, like that's a huge part in the story. The lightning is there. That even small details like Nicolas Cage's character being called Nathan in the story, he's called like Nahum. Like a sort of a
More of a biblical name?
or like an Amish version of Nathan. So that's really, really interesting that it was more similar than I remembered. So okay, do you want to hit us with some questions?
Yeah, well, firstly, I wanted to ask if you guys think the film achieves portraying something described as never before seen to the human eyes. That is a huge challenge set up for the filmmakers. What do you think about just the aesthetic of the colour? And also we can talk about the music choices as well. I think that's wrapped into this.
So I don't know, when I saw the film, I know when I was watching it for the first time, I noticed Lavinia had dyed hair. And I
She
thought...
had streaks, right?
Yeah.
She had like blue streaks or something.
Exactly. Right.
Yeah.
Well, so this is the thing.
Okay, yeah.
So she had purple streaks in her hair, purple to my eyes. And I remembered thinking, I bet I know what they're going to do with that. And maybe that confirmation bias like influenced the way that I viewed the film. But to my eyes, I think that they used that color in her hair to show that she like was already more in touch with the kind of eldritch, Aeonian monster force that the color was.
She also has the tattoo on her foot, which is the same satanic symbol from the cover of the Necronomicon.
Right, an inverted pentagram? Is
Yeah.
it? Yeah, and so, I thought, there's like little details. But the color particularly, I think... Right, okay, yeah. So in the in the story, it's made super clear that this is something that cannot be put into words.
Did they ever say purple? Did
No.
they ever? Okay, interesting. But I love that they went for purple because purple is like the color associated with like queerness. Lesbians used to wear like lilac historically to signal that they were lesbians to other lesbians. Purple's a historically queer color.
Yes.
So I'm loving that choice.
I mean,
like a kind of pinky purple tone. It's hard to
it's kind of,
describe.
is it verging on neon pinky purple?
Yeah, I would say, it's
Also-
very luminescent.
Yeah.
Daff is colorblind, so it'd be interesting to see
partially,
if the color still works under those physiological conditions.
Yeah, so I saw the color as a kind of pink. So yeah, we're not far off. Yeah.
Okay.
I think it
pink
maybe is
triangle
kind
and all
of
that.
pinky purple. Yeah, but
Yeah.
it was cool. In the story it says that there's definitely this kind of like phosphorescent element to it. But okay, all right. Last week when we were talking about this came up, and I said that the idea of the story is dumb. Okay, and I remember my words, and I have been like kind of
For this film, or was it for Dark Encounters?
this idea
Yeah.
of seeing a color that you can't see, that's a dumb idea, and I
Because of the cones in her eyes, like they can't just change.
well, if they did, it would need to be in the story, as far as I'm concerned. I don't know, like.
But is it possible that this alien form genetically mutates the humans around it, which allows for them to see the color?
Very possible, but
That's
it's not
my reading.
in the story.
That's
very cool. That's very
Because
clever.
it enacts genetic mutations on everything around it, the tomatoes, so the
Now I feel
humans have been genetically mutated as
God,
well.
of course.
And that's what allows for them to see the color.
It's actually really obvious
So
when
is
you
that
say
to
it.
say that?
Well, that's my reading. I don't know if it's in the original text.
I mean, that's something else as well. It maybe implies that the color was sort of always there, but not always. But I mean, well before we
That's
were made
fascinating,
aware of the
actually, if you
presence.
think about the intro monologue by Ward, who talks about the area being this elder land of witch legend. It implies that, spooky shit happened here before, but not experienced in the same way exactly.
Yeah.
So it's almost like the visitor has been before.
So this is all, the only thing that I would say though is that like what Lovecraft stresses over and over again is that this color is from a different spectrum of light. So we see light in this red to violet spectrum, isn't it? Red to violet.
You're the science guy. You're gonna have to just.
You're looking at me.
I really wish I had looked this up.
Validate that.
But what light is certain frequencies of concentrations of photonic energy. So what we perceive as color is a certain frequency that we can pick up. And so our eyes can see a certain spectrum of light energy. We cannot see ultraviolet light, whereas bees can see ultraviolet light. Different animals can see different things. Sharks can feel magnetic forces, which are different from photonic forces. But, so the idea that there's like a different spectrum does still kind of bother me, because the further up the light spectrum you get, the closer you get towards ionizing radiation.
But we see that this light has the impact of radiation on the things around it too. So
oh my god, you're so smart.
Is it possible that there's like a radiation element to it?
Oh yeah. Oh my god, yeah. I think
the science checks out enough for me to suspend my disbelief.
Yeah, oh god, it really does. I think I've just been like so focused on being like, this is dumb, that I didn't stop to think. I didn't realize the M. Night Shyamalan twist. I'm the dumb one. It was me all along.
I think it's more that I'm like a wee bit more open-minded in terms of what I don't know. So I'm like, sure, why not? There's this weird color from another dimension.
You're Lavinia.
That could be possible. Like I'm just more open to things beyond my understanding.
So I don't know. I think for me,
I'm the Mulder.
I've thought about it as well, and I thought like, could this work if the color had been green instead? Because I don't know, green's my favorite color. I thought maybe green could have worked as a color as well. But
no, I think that there's something that appeals to our like reptilian brain about the color. I think that there are certain things that signal to human beings on that very like mammal level something is dangerous, toxic. I feel like biologically speaking, if it was green, we wouldn't have the same reaction.
It would feel natural.
Yeah,
I think that's the thing about the color, is that it doesn't occur very commonly in nature.
Yeah.
Right? And when it does, it's usually associated with something that we shouldn't approach necessarily.
Interestingly, I see the color of Scotland as a kind of purple because of like the purple heather.
Yes.
So I'm quite comfortable with like purple in nature. Probably wouldn't eat it though.
Well, you see, that's the thing. So the color does seem like weird, but at the same time not evil. You know? Yeah, so it's not like a dark red, which I think would have signaled to us that like this is satanic. Instead, it's like it's purple. It's kind of it's kind of
there's
spacey,
a flair to it. I think it's like it reveals to me like the limits of like what nature can create and the beauty that it can create. In a sense, you see incredible colors in nature. So I agree. I don't find it necessarily like threatening as a color in and of itself.
Yes, I think they did a great job. I think they made a good choice. If it had been a bright yellow, I think it would have been like the pea film. It would have been, or like, I don't know, the honey film or something.
What's the pea film?
You mean people would have been like,
we'll talk off mic.
Will we cover that later?
People would have been like, have you seen Color to Space? It's weird. It looks like everything's covered in pea all the time.
Looks like the Bee Movie.
Like, I don't know. Yeah, or the Bee Movie. Yeah, exactly. It would have been way worse. So I think they made a good choice.
Since we're all in a little bit of a silly space, let's move on to my Nicolas Cage question.
Nice.
What do we think? Is Nicolas Cage serving as Wickerman energy, Mandy energy, or both? Or is it Conor energy? I think there's a little bit of Conor in there.
The thing that I really enjoyed about this film was that he only really goes full Cage an hour in, I think. He's silly for a lot of that sort of first hour.
Yeah.
I mean, this sort of weird vocal tics he has. Just the strange way that he pronounces some words.
Hello.
But then only comes later on, where he starts sort of rounding his O's in a really strange way.
See, I think I know what his choice was here. I think because he talks about his father, like, oh, I'm becoming my father.
Oh, you think he
becomes
sort of
his father
transforming
more.
into his father?
I think that's what Cage, like, having
That was
listened
Cage
to
with methodology,
interviews with him and stuff, he always makes very like conscious decisions.
Yeah.
So if I had to guess, I would say that what he's trying to do, because he does an impression of his father, and it sounds like his Vampire's Kiss character.
Yes.
And then later in the movie, he's like, he starts rounding those vowels in that very strange, distinctive way. I don't think Nicolas Cage has a sense of humor about his performances.
I agree. It seemed very deliberate, and I think the point, the line he has at the point at which I noticed that something had changed in his manner of speaking was the line. I have it here. I'm just going to read it out.
I'm so glad we're going to get a recitation.
Like
accent. You have to do the voice.
Oh, I have to do the voice.
Everything's riding on this
Oh,
stuff.
gosh.
Guys, we have
I wish I could find
Nicolas
it.
Cage on the podcast this week. He's
Surprise guest.
He says it's when, I think it's when Lavinia and her older brother, his
Benny.
name Benny, they're trying to convince Nathan that they have to leave the farm.
Yeah.
Right.
And he says, "Get the fuck out of my sight. Or actually, I'll save you the effort and get out of yours." And it's just, and then he storms off, and like that's the point. That's the point where you can tell something has changed in Nathan.
Doesn't he then go upstairs and go like, well, I'm not going to win any Father of the Year awards?
He does. I'm not going to win any Father of the Year awards.
Like, no, dude, you just went insane.
He put that in there. But I read that as the colour like really taking over. I can't remember how soon that moment is after he has the shower. Oh no, he has the shower after that, I think.
Yeah,
maybe he goes back to the house, says the Father of the Year award thing,
Right.
has a shower and gets sort of the scaly skin again. But that's the sort of turning point of the film for me. It's like, it's a little bit like, to come back to what sort of Cage is this? I think a little bit it's Mandy Cage. Because the same thing happens in Mandy. He has one scene where he goes into the bathroom and starts yelling. Just fully collapses.
No, I'm going to fight you on that one.
Really?
I think the Mandy performance is amazing. Now, this may be because for everyone who doesn't know me, I'm a failed actor, and my acting style was very much Nicolas Cage. Like, I'm just very much like of the opinion that like, hey, people came to see a show, give them a show. And that doesn't go down so well like in British theatre right now. So yeah, I don't know. I think the Mandy performance is absolutely wonderful. Like, he really makes me tear up in Mandy because
he makes me tear up.
yeah, because you get this opinion that he is like a psychopath. You know, he is like Red. He is the like embodiment of danger, but that he's like a retired embodiment of danger. So that like the drinking vodka scene is like everything that he's tried to suppress about himself. You know, and his sense of calm that he found with Mandy is disrupted, in that he lets this beast go, the tiger go, that's on his t-shirt the whole time, you know. So like I love the Mandy performance. Maybe
I suppose through like the omission of Mandy as a character, we see that there was this careful balance struck between the two characters, and once she's gone, Red's personality
I'm going to pander.
changes.
I'm going to pander to you so strong here, but basically, Mandy is about the disruption of yin and yang energy, and that
Feel it so deep.
Third wheeling it so hard.
No, but I also like the idea of Nicolas Cage adding texture to the movie with this kind of like massive character change, like this accelerated aging where he seems to become his father. I think that works with the deeper themes of what the alien is doing to the area around it. So I get how weird it appears, but I also think that it was quite a careful decision.
Yeah, totally.
Careful for Nicolas Cage, because careful for Nicolas Cage is actually quite reckless, because whenever this happens in a Nicolas Cage film, I think he risks
He risks it all.
He risks throwing the film into something kind of into like the ridiculous category.
Yeah, I suppose it's not a
Laughable.
careful choice.
See, this is what I want to get back to about the movie eventually, but okay, maybe we'll have time to talk
Okay,
about it.
final little shallow question. Why are men always mansplaining the Necronomicon to me?
Okay, you need to give a backstory to this.
Is this a trap?
Oh, it's a trap.
This isn't a trap. You guys were...
You need to explain this.
We're all mates. After first viewing Colour Out of Space, I'm part of some internet forums on witchcraft for, cosmopolitan gals. And I just asked people if they'd ever bought the Necronomicon, dived into it, used it in their practice. And this previously all-female group, suddenly male commenters emerged out of nowhere and were just very mansplainy to me about the book. Don't you know that it's a fake text? That kind of thing. And I was like, yeah, of course I know, but I'm interested in looking into it. So I kind of haven't bothered to touch Lovecraft because of the culture and fandom around Lovecraft.
Interesting.
Okay. I mean...
So I'm just wondering why Lovecraft seems to resonate so much with these sort of bro characters. And I think the fact that there was space for me to enjoy a work of Lovecraft's through Colour Out of Space 2019 is why I revere it so much, because previously I felt like that fandom was hostile to female energy.
So this, I think, opens the... It sheds light on the elephant in the room that is present when anyone is discussing H.P. Lovecraft today, which is basically that Lovecraft was a dick. He was a horrible little man who took himself very seriously and died alone and unloved. And does that somehow play into this masculine fandom that surrounds him now? Yeah, well, I mean, probably.
It's got real, like, Jordan Peterson energy, the guys that like Lovecraft.
Yeah, and it's really hard to sort of put a definite finger on, but I think we're probably going to end up talking to some extent about post-humanism or anti-humanism or something in the later stages of the cast. But to just ready myself for that, I was looking up things about how Lovecraft might link into post-human theory, and the obvious connection that I think anybody might reach for is Donna Haraway's I think second latest book, or possibly latest book, Staying with the Trouble, Making Kin in the... Well, I don't actually know how to pronounce it, but because she uses an intentional misspelling of Lovecraft's Cthulhu. And then side note, Cthulhu is pronounced Cthulhu. It's just a sound, right? That's the point. It's meant to, like, that the jarble of letters is meant to make you reach for this, like, glottal, like...
You're worse than the people who demand to call it a croissant.
I am, yeah. I'll have a croissant and a... but, so I think we'll probably all just go with Cthulhu for this. So
how does Haraway's text relate to Lovecraft?
What Haraway explains then is that although she uses this term Cthulhu scene or Cthulhu scene, I'm not too sure, that she wants to distance herself intentionally from Lovecraft's misogynistic and racial nightmare. And I think, that's something that you really can't stay away from, is that, he was someone who was of his time, but was even bad for his time. Like in the beginning of the story, I've told you guys already, within the first couple of paragraphs where the scientist character is describing the land. So you've already mentioned this, how there's this description of how old New England, there's this kind of energy there, this old eldritch energy. And it's like, yeah, I'm with you, Lovecraft. And then he just throws this stuff in, like, the Poles tried to live there and they left, and the Italians tried and they couldn't hack it and they left. And it's like, whoa, where is this coming from? Where's all this race hate? And like throughout the text, he keeps making these like little like throwaway references to like, yeah, I think there were gypsies here at some point. Meh. Like,
but what I
really
want to know is, in Hathaway's text, is she making the case for us forming non-human relationships? And when she mentions Cthulhu in that context, is it as a means to say things that you've previously identified as monster should be open to your compassion?
Sort of. I think all she's really drawing on is this idea of like tentacularity. So basically Cthulhu has got these like big tentacles, and that it's a really like evocative image, that it has like telepathic powers, and it's connected to things that are, you know, beyond time and beyond space, being this elder god. And like to try and comprehend Cthulhu is to go insane type of thing. So Haraway is very delicately evoking that, but actually is evoking things to do with like spiders and octopi more so, and trying to just say that what she's trying to call the Cthulhu scene is an era in which people would be aware of the tentacular powers and forces of collected things with names like Naga, Gaia, Tangrosa, and then like does one of those Haraway things where she just like lists like 20 different nouns that no one else has ever heard of. Yeah, if you haven't read much Haraway, that's like one of Haraway's very
she loves an index.
She loves it being like an indices and stuff, but it's like it is a very intentional thing, and it does make sense. But you know, it's also
that's very cool. Actually, referencing Haraway's reading of Lovecraft in relation to this film, because I think that the film, through the character of Lavinia, makes the case for forging these kind of relationships with the tentacular, or the escapable qualities of a collective of things like the color.
Yes. The scientist is also a person of color, you know, which is an attempt to kind of make it less
apologize for Lovecraft's legacy.
Yeah. And just to make it clear,
it's hard not to read it that way,
like Lavinia does not exist in the story. It's three sons.
Yeah, this is where I want to move to, actually. I think the film makes the case for intentionality is important in ritual, as Lavinia only ever asks for her own protection and is the only family member who can be ambiguously said to have survived. Do we think she called the colour from space?
Did she, that it came to her?
From her initial ritual where she asked for her mother's cancer to be burned up, but calls for something to take her out of their homestead.
God.
Do we think she called the colour?
Yeah, because so the film sort of begins with Ward stumbling upon Lavinia doing this incantation, and she's asking for something to come down from space and something to help her to leave. Well, not something to come down from space, something to happen that will cure the mother and help her leave, and that's exactly what happens.
The mother's cancer can be said to have burned up.
Classic monkey paw type deal.
Exactly,
yeah, well, this is the thing where intentionality is important, so, or I suppose wording is important.
Yeah.
You know, it kind of says that we need to be careful with our word choice.
It's sort of saying, like, be careful what you wish for. Be
careful what you wish for, and be careful with your enactment of a wish, I suppose.
Yeah.
The universe won't grant you something through assumption.
But then that's something that is, like, very... It's kind of like very true to Lovecraft, but it's like a manipulation of it as well, which is really cool. It's like, so Lovecraft loves to shatter humanist, desires, or humanist, like, reserved opinions. So, if somebody thinks that they are in control of magic or in control of any part of the universe, it's very Lovecraftian to show them that you are not in control in any way. So I think, like, Lavinia's intentionality in the film is really interesting, because it's like...
It's to escape in a human sense of the word escape.
Yeah.
but that humanist desire is completely shattered by...
It's like if we are to have a conversation with the universe, with forces of magic, or, you know, even if you try to like extend this to something like religion, or, you know, where people pray to extraterrestrial beings, you know, it's like, why do we expect extraterrestrial beings to understand the specifics of our plight? You know, why? So if we looked at the movie last week, you know, why would an alien's intervention be something that we could so understand and something that would ascribe to our morality? Instead, it would make much more sense in a kind of scientific term for this kind of absolute obliteration of humanity to occur. Yeah.
Or, you know, it's a very different kind of alien to the one that we saw in Dark Encounters, because it feels more like an organism trying to protect its turf, basically.
What?
Do you think?
Protect?
In Colorado Space.
What?
It feels that way to me. It feels like my reading of the events...
feels protective.
It feels like it's trying to protect its space. It feels like it's now crash landed on this planet, and it's tried to basically enact this kind of defense mechanism.
Whoa!
This is my reading of that of the events.
Interesting.
But I have to say that it also has a kind of viral quality by the way that it alters the genetics around it. I'm not sure about it having any kind of intentionality from how I read it, but it definitely takes action on the things around it, whether that's through defense or not, or just the pure desire to continue to exist.
Yeah, that's right. It's sort of evolutionary biology.
Yeah,
was my reading.
That it's frustrating to me how possibly totally on the money you are.
Right.
So in the story, there, encased in the meteor is what is called the globule. So there's basically like an egg in the meteor, and a scientist pokes it and it pops and just kind of melts away into nothingness. Or we think nothingness, but it's probably ionizing radiation, like what we were talking about earlier, you know. But what they immediately say is the scientists assume that there would have been more of these globules inside the meteor, so they dig around in the meteor, which is meant to be this very malleable material. So they dig around in this weird gunge, looking for more globules, but can't find any. But then later in the story, the characters piece together that there had to be more than one, and actually that there were probably three. That there was a globule that grows to its full strength, and it manages to do something similar to what is the climax of this movie, where it beams itself into space again. They assume that there was the second one, which was the one that was popped, but then that there's a third one that was damaged and so can't beam itself into space, and instead it's just lingering in the earth and is tied to the trees of New England, and it's just slowly, inch by inch, poisoning more and more of the earth, which is something that I think is really cool and something I would like to talk more about.
This is a bit of a reach. I think that the psychedelic elements of the movie make me think in a psychedelic way, but could it be seen as a kind of like colonial alien?
I think absolutely that there's
a colonial force.
I think it the idea of something like this coming from the earth, coming from sort of earth that the humans in the story feel that they've sort of conquered in a sense, because we do have that thread in the film where they try and live off the land, they try and milk the alpacas, they grow vegetables. There is this sort of theme of dominion of this space. But I think you get this a lot in American horror, is that the space, the ground is haunted.
Yes.
There was something here before you that you were responsible for removing.
It's not yours.
Yeah, it's not yours.
You've disturbed something. I wanted to then ask about the idea of this dominion over the land and in particular the fact that this movie focuses on a nuclear family. So to rely solely on the members of their nuclear family seems to contribute to the gardeners' downfall. Do you guys agree?
That by focusing on the nuclear family,
well, the family consistently are isolated from other contact and are kind of hostile to people visiting their home.
Interesting.
And that was a decision for Teresa's recovery, to pull away from other social ties and move to this remote place. But ultimately, their isolation is what leads to all of their deaths, and then they're completely cut off, and that interrupts their ability to seek help.
Yeah.
So it got me thinking about nuclear families, ideas of making relationships with kin. And I don't know, I think there's something there to be said about the risk of solely focusing on you and your own, particularly with such a patriarchal figure as Nathan Gardner at the helm of the family. Ultimately, the patriarch fails to protect the family, like in Dark Encounter. And we see that Lavinia, the character who forges ties with this extraterrestrial being,
survives.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Because I think one of the things that the colour does, or one of its sort of defence functions, the result is always, I think almost always messing with the family unit, right?
Yeah.
You have the father sort of slowly dipping into a kind of madness. You have the sort of reverse birth, right?
Yeah.
Which is a sort of one of the most memorable images in the whole. I certainly couldn't stop thinking about it.
Yeah.
Just the horrible way that they scream.
The mother trying to kind of absorb her youngest son.
Yeah.
And, there's definitely a metaphorical weight to that, the idea of trying to protect your children and nurture them, but ultimately that leads to their downfall. So I kind of saw this desire for the family to exist as a unit being a weakness in a sense.
Right. I mean, okay, yeah, definitely, because Lavinia establishes the kind of antithesis of the nuclear family, in a sense, by her desire to leave.
Reach beyond it.
To break away.
Yeah.
She wants to go. And now, where she doesn't want to end up in wherever the fuck she does end up, with this weird space planet from a video game, that, which looks super cool, by the way. But I think what she wants is probably just to go to New York City and live in an apartment and be kind of cool and cosmopolitan, right?
I mean, other witchy types.
But, this...
what was the name of your
this
Facebook
planet
group?
could be said as the...
Witchy people for cosmopolitan gals?
The Brooklyn of space, maybe. I mean,
maybe
we don't know.
Who
It
knows?
looked pretty built up
Space
to me.
Brooklyn.
Maybe she's going to live in a walk-up in this weird weird place.
Planet.
She gets to the tentacle planet and they're like, okay, cool, so rent is $1,500 a month, But no, so she wants to break away from the nuclear family. She wants to strike out on her own and have her own thing. And
she
that's why
survives because of that.
So if we imagine that if the family had been less... hostile. I mean, one of the main things is the part played by the lady, the Hawaiian lady that played Pocahontas in The New World, Corianna Kilcher. She plays the mayor of Arkham,
right?
That wants the gardener's place to be sold so that the land can be turned into a new reservoir. That's in the story, sort of. But they are resisting that and trying to sort of fight for this old connection to the land instead of allowing the land to change and move. So, yeah, I don't know. It is the nuclear family that they're resisting, but then there's also it's a cool question, and I think you can definitely read it into it, but I think I would maybe counter it a little bit just by saying that you do get the impression that Nick Cage is a stay-at-home husband because he's doing the cooking at least at that point. So
it's not a typical nuclear family.
It's not a typical nuclear family. She definitely seems to be the breadwinner, and she's working from home. It seems kind of a little bit more cosmopolitan than one might suggest with the nuclear family.
But that fails. That isolation that they've created ultimately hinders her ability to continue to work and be the breadwinner because of their lack of Wi-Fi connection. So actually the decisions made by the patriarch to move back to the father's farm hinders the progressiveness of the family.
Okay, so what we can see is that there are the roots there, and that this was something that was avoidable. You know, if they had
They say that they moved from a city to
so by returning to their roots, it actually kind of triggers their downfall.
The moral of the story is
embrace change, basically. Embrace, but not in a kind of like industrial sense. I think embrace ever-evolving family units.
Yes.
That's what I like to read into it.
I mean, the director noted that before he started making this movie. So, okay, you know, there's interesting facts about the director.
I have to disagree with myself. Because they do have a squatter played by Tommy Chong living on their property. We'd be remiss not to mention him. That's a pretty progressive family unit that they have going on there.
So is this film against the progressive family unit?
I'm not sure. But I have to say, I mean, I've never... I don't know, might just be me, but I didn't grow up with a squatter in the garden shed.
Oh, I totally did. It was great.
Okay.
No, seriously, a guy used to just come to our house and mow the lawn every so often. We wouldn't ask him, but he knew where the lawnmower was.
I think we had that. I think that's a countryside
That's just a rural thing.
I think that's
just
a rural
happens.
thing. Yeah.
So, okay, no, I think you are kind of right that there's this like tension of the nuclear family. I was going to call it the atomic family. I don't know why, but there's this tension with the nuclear family. But you know, while it's asking all of these questions, it's kind of like in the way that Game of Thrones should have ended. That there's like these squabbles that human beings are having. You know, oh, I can't get enough Wi-Fi. Should we have moved from the city? Should we have? And then the universe just goes, no. None of this matters. None of this matters.
So it's not to say
small.
that the issue is responded to on the human plane. It's actually, it's all shown to be irrelevant in a sense.
So I think the moral of the story is actually whether you embrace change or don't embrace change or move to the city or don't move to the city. The universe doesn't give a shit.
Cosmic horror. Wow. Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, then I wanted to ask you guys my final question. So Nathan and Teresa frequently bemoan turning into their parents, which leads to that character change in Nicolas Cage that we love, and they struggle to relate to their teenage children. I think the film explores genetic encoding as a powerful phenomenon, both in human reproduction and how the extraterrestrial colour alters genes. So can anything new be said of free will in this context?
Whoa, okay, cool. So you're thinking of like Richard Dawkins' selfish gene about how...
I'm thinking about the way that you know, we've come to understand human psychology from this kind of nature-nurture equilibrium at this point. And so this is a film where Nathan and Teresa both start to turn into their parents. You know, certain behaviours manifest, whether that's through nature or nurture, but I think that the fact that genes are so front and center in terms of what the alien does to the environment around it makes me think about the genetic legacy in a much bigger way.
See, but then this is super interesting because what we are learning now is that so you know, we all believe this evolution idea, that there's the idea that, you know, things evolve and then, you know, one generation one generation is distinct from the generation before and has these like new traits, and those are inherited traits, and then you live and die with those traits, right? So that's actually an old idea of evolution. Obviously it's coming from Darwin, but at the same time as Darwin was writing, there were other people writing alternative ideas of evolution, such as that what you did in your life would impact your genes. So it wasn't just that, you know, the one before you lived, and so then you get the traits of the one before you.
Yeah.
Instead, it's what you do with your life actually influences your genes and influences what you pass on.
Genes are kind of modifying within a lifetime.
Genes are being modified. Genes are amorphous.
And the code, in a sense, can be said to being rewritten responsive to the changes that take place.
And I think that's what we're seeing here. Yeah.
I think we're kind of seeing that here. You know, Nathan and Teresa end up following a path similar to their parents, ultimately their genes don't change. They move back to a farm.
But their genes totally change. Teresa turns into a crazy monster.
So in the human sense of before the monster impacts them, they're seen to be similar to their parents in a sense.
Yeah, but I think what this movie is saying is change is gonna happen.
Right?
Yeah.
Exactly. And I think that that's part of their
it's actually kind of a hopeful film in that
downfall
sense.
is that they're resistant to the changes taking place.
Here's a question that I want to ask you guys. You're saying downfall as if their death is like a bad or lamentable thing. But, is it a bad or lamentable thing? Like,
well, to take up the view of cosmic horror, of course not.
Yeah.
But
that's
it's hard to shake out of your kind of human exceptionalism brain sometimes.
Do it now.
But I don't want to die.
There's no such thing as death. There's just becoming part of some other great entity.
I think we'll find our Ezra character.
Yeah,
Yeah, right.
Our Tommy Chong over here. What do you think, Daff?
About
About the idea of the fact that change is going to happen.
Genetics and free will.
We'll see. I'm not sure.
Oh,
I don't know.
Oh,
I actually don't know.
What a
I don't know.
cop-out.
It is a bit of a cop out. Honestly, watching the film, I was more interested in how the color seemed to accelerate their sort of. I don't know.
Yeah, that was. I felt the energy like dying on that sentence as you started.
I got nothing.
No, but I think I
think that it, both are present. There's this idea that you receive the legacy of your genes, but you're also open to change in those same genes in your own lifetime.
Okay, I think I know what you were going to say, Daff, and I'm going to guess, and it's something that's in the story, and it's super cool, and it's that the color affects your mind, not your genes. Not your body necessarily, but it's the Nahum character in it describes how it like comes into your brain and it changes the way you think about things. And what Lovecraft is like really hinting at with this is the connection of, basically he's breaking apart the mind-body distinction. There's no like Cartesian divide. Instead, the color influences your thoughts. And that is changing your physical makeup of the people within the story. It's super cool. It's super interesting. And like going back to what you were saying at the very beginning about how the color is probably changing the way the humans are seeing. It is a case of people's genetic code being rewritten, and that's how they're able to see things differently. Like, yeah, I think it's super cool. And I think that the film is really speaking towards these kind of abilities for other experiences, other environmental factors to change human beings, which of course...
I think what I should have mentioned is like the micro and macro levels. So on the micro level, your genes are being altered. And on the macro level, you can be open to change or resistant to change, but it would be better to be in harmony with what's going on at the micro level. Lavinia
seems chill with it, doesn't she?
She seems to be the only one that is embracing change, the inevitable change that makes up our universe. And again, I think that she survives, but in a new form.
Yeah, the film is trying to say Lavinia is dope.
Absolutely. And I think that her character is a great addition to the story.
Totally.
Or that witchcraft is dope.
Witchcraft is dope.
I think.
Well, that's something I was going to say earlier, was that the... so there's one mention of witchcraft in the story, maybe two, but they're very passing. But I do know that when I saw them, there's definitely a kind of moment. It was like, oh yeah, witchcraft, cool. That element wasn't taken out of nowhere.
I was curious about that. What is there any sort of position that Lovecraft takes in the story?
He just likes to say like, and there was witchcraft in the land,
right?
just
so
to
he doesn't
kind
really
of
go any further. He doesn't really meditate.
Yeah, because the whole thing about Lovecraft is that it's written like Poe or Verne. You know, it's like written like a Jules Verne story. So it's like a scientist will come in and try to like explain things. Actually, if you want to know who H.P. Lovecraft was, he's Dwight from The Office.
Completely.
H.P. Lovecraft is Dwight from The Office. No. He says, well, because Dwight's an asshole. Dwight is a total asshole.
Yeah, but
you know?
I have such affection for him.
It literally, he says that the way Lovecraft writes a story is that he begins with the soil and thinks outward.
Oh, that is very Dwight Quay. Sure.
Yeah, that's
Beat
Dwight.
farmer.
Dwight's lecture on soil in The Office, where he's like, "Wait, I bet you think it's the ammonia." No. It's nitrates. Like, he is H.P. Lovecraft, basically. Just this, like, very serious science
I wonder if
fiction
Lovecraft
lover.
would have had a bobblehead figure of himself.
Definitely.
Had he been able to.
100%.
So, where to go now? I guess we haven't really talked about time and the weird impact of time. We've got a couple of minutes left.
Yeah.
Any thoughts on what takes place in the house?
Yeah.
With time in the final act.
What I did enjoy was that it wasn't clear whether, I mean, later on in the film they do say that the color bends time, like around a black hole, that kind of thing. But at first it isn't clear whether or not people are just blacking out or not. It made me think of that X-Files episode where people sort of lose time.
Yeah.
You know, because there's that one part where Lavinia is washing dishes and then she's just sort of something happens and the time moves forward or she blacks out.
It's really like the X-Files.
Yeah.
Mulder calls on that lots of times about how like when abductions take place, you don't know what happens to time. Yeah.
And it also presents this idea that time as something that is perceived, I guess.
Yes.
Not this material thing, but something. It asks that question early on in the film, I think.
Right. I like it, but I'm just like a huge time travel buff and like love the idea of space-time and things. And so, you know, if there's an entity that's able to travel from, you know, one solar system to another, then yeah, time would be kind of a meaningless concept to it. So maybe when you experience the color in that kind of Arrival kind of way, you know, like in Arrival, where if you learn this new language, you're able to perceive and act within time differently. Like maybe they're experiencing the aliens' concept of time. But that was actually one of the things that kind of annoyed me about the film.
Well, I was going to say any negatives.
Yeah. Okay. My biggest negative with the film is Tommy Chong.
Wow.
Why is
that? Is his character an addition from the original story?
Total. I mean, not entirely. So there's this character called Amy in the story that is actually really important. And it is Amy tells the story to the character that would be Ward, if you understand. And Amy's super important and isn't a vagrant, a squatter on the grounds, but he sort of like he's another kind of farmer, rural laborer that lives near the family, the main family, the Carpenters. The gardeners, and carpenters.
The carpenters,
well, whatever.
Karen and Richard.
So Tommy Chong's character isn't like a total invention, but he's such a stretch. And on one hand, I'm so sympathetic towards like trying to inject some comedy into this otherwise very dry, serious material. But on the other hand, like, why is there a cat called G-Spot? Like, come on, you know.
He does. I think my issue with the Ezra character is more that I don't know that we needed to have a sort of conduit character to help explain what was going on.
Yeah.
He had a couple of key lines, but they felt very sort of exposition-y.
Well, they give him quite a lot of the interesting lines from the story. You know, I think he's the one that says it was just a color.
It used to be in there. Now it's out there, man.
Yeah. But when they hear his recording back, isn't he the one who says it's just a color out of space?
Yeah, that's right.
And the scientist saying that he would still not drink the water. That's from the book as well. Like, there's a lot of stuff actually from the story made it into the final script, you know. But so that's my negative point. Is I'm just not sure about the humor now that I've read a little bit more into it. But I understand why it's there, but
I suppose it also could pose further questions for the story in general.
Yeah.
Like, why does he meet his ends in the way that he does?
Yeah. Oh my God, I wanted to say, I've been trying to say, this is the third time I've tried to say it. The director had a coven of witches live in his house before he made this movie.
Amazing.
You're kidding.
So that at least accounts for the fact that there isn't as much witchcraft ritual in the story.
I think he just like kind of likes witches. But apparently he just like, somebody basically on Airbnb was like, hey, I'm having a meeting. Some friends and I are having like a conference. Can we stay in your house? And he was like, yeah, cool, whatever. Because he had tried to make a really important film in the early 90s.
Yeah.
And it all went horribly wrong. So he's still got like some money, but he's not a rich guy by any account, but he had this house, and these witches then showed up, and he just like didn't ask them to leave, and so they stayed in his house apparently for like 3 months. And when he was asked about it in an interview, I think his response was like, yeah, they were a little messy, but whatever. So I think he basically is like quite similar to the Tommy Chong character in the film, and maybe that's why he put some of that stuff in.
Yeah,
so
he wanted to put himself in there in a way.
It's kind of like a stoner's reading of H.P. Lovecraft.
Yeah, right.
And I get that. And I get that will work so much better for cinema. And I think it probably even made it a more like enjoyable experience for me. I don't know. I think I'm just like getting dangerously close to becoming like a Tolkien nerd, but like for Lovecraft. So I'm going to need like 3 hours of outtakes now explaining the like adaptation process or whatever. But you told me, Daff, that this is like, there's going to be 2 more movies.
Apparently, yeah. The director said this is the first movie of a planned trilogy of Lovecraft adaptations.
I'm so excited.
So I wonder what we'll get next.
Who do you think is going to star in the next ones? Like Shia LaBeouf or something?
I'm hoping that Elijah Wood makes an appearance, to be honest.
Oh, it would be so good.
I think it'd be great.
A Dunwich Horror with Elijah Wood in it.
Yeah.
Well, we'll definitely have to cover it if it does get made and if we're still going. So I think it's time to wrap things up. Any final thoughts?
Do you want to talk about what we're going to do next week?
Next week, for some reason, the responsibility has fallen to me to cover... should I say the name of the film?
Oh, yeah.
Please do.
It is a film, a 2020 film called Butt Boy.
Yeah!
Connor had already seen this film.
Yeah.
You read the
seen,
synopsis.
like, reviews
You'd read the synopsis.
yeah.
You know what it was about. He told me not to watch any trailers. Don't read anything about it. Go in totally cold. And that's the advice that I'm bestowing into anyone who's listening to this right now. Go into it cold. I'm not going to say any more.
And leave cold as well, if you're of my opinion. But we'll dive into that next week. Thanks so much for covering Colour Out of Space with me, guys.
No, you're welcome.
Such a pleasure.
Okay, so on to next week.
See you later.
Excelsior.